All right, so today we're walking through a one-off kind of sermon this morning, talking through the idea of a surrendered life. Now, a surrendered life, this is something where we've only been here since November, October, something like that, but love seeing what you guys are doing here at Phos already. Love our first week here was bringing people up and giving them money based on them doing foster. It was just I love churches that are generous, and I love churches that do seriously look like churches that are surrendered to God in all that they do. And so I'm commending you at this point. Thank you for having us in and welcoming us in that way as a family. But we want to walk through a few different ideas, 5 points this morning, okay? So I know that Tyler's normally a 3-point sermon kind of guy, and he goes long sometimes. So I'm going to do 5, and I'm going to try and go shorter than him. Does that make sense? Does that work? I have ADHD, so I'm just on to the next thing. Okay, so track with me, please. Try to work with me through this. So the idea of surrender. How many just love the idea of surrender? Anybody in here? Oh my gosh. Okay, you guys are so Christian. I love that. But the idea as human beings, though, you ever think, the white flag is just something, I just want to wave the white flag. I want to give up, surrender, and just do that kind of thing. So I have an older, does anybody have older brothers? Okay, so I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me. We called Freak Show. He was 6 foot tall. My dad was 5'4". My mom was 5'6". I'm 5'6". My sister's 5'3". So, my brother we called Freak Show. He was just a big dude, and we didn't know where it came from. And so we had this loving relationship where we would wrestle, and we would have, the sister didn't wrestle that much. So it was he had to pick on his little brother. But there was all these times where we had these experiences where we would be wrestling. We ruined Christmas one time. We were wrestling on the couch, knocked the Christmas tree over. My dad said, "Christmas is over," packed it all up, and we just called it. It was the day after Christmas. And so we had all these moments, but there was these moments when we were growing up where we would wrestle. He's way bigger than me, and I was even smaller then, And so we have these moments where he would wrestle me. He'd pin me down, and if anybody's old enough, we used to say, "Uncle, uncle." Anybody? Instead of mercy or tap out, now it was just uncle back then. Don't know where that came from, to be honest, but whatever. Some uncle tore up somebody, and they were like, "Uncle." All right, so... But there was these moments where I had to surrender to my brother because I literally couldn't breathe, or I couldn't move, or I couldn't have these moments. And then we see these things in the news where people are waving the white flag because they have to surrender whatever the situation is, but they're surrendering themselves, whether that's to a force that is coming against them, and they have to wave the white flag to stay safe and to be surrendered into their care, or whatever that looks like. And so the idea, though, as a human, surrender is not fun. Surrender means you're giving up something so that you can have something else, whether that's safety or a good experience or just to breathe again or whatever that is. And so the idea of surrender is not one that we love. And this is a rhetorical question, so I don't want hands shooting up. But how many of us in our experience have said, "God, I will follow you if you allow," I heard, oh yeah, I've been there. "If you don't ask me to give this thing up, or if you allow me to keep this thing." And so we do that all the time, right? In a lot of different ways. But a lot of us usually don't say it out loud, "Hey, God, I'll do this if." Maybe we do, but a lot of us live it out quietly, don't we? We live out the idea of, "I will give you my life, but I will keep this thing." And we just keep it quiet. Or, "I'm going to give you my life, but I want to keep this aspect or this component of my life." We say, "Jesus, you can have my Sundays, but not my schedule." Let that one sit there for a second, okay? "You can have my forgiveness, but not my obedience." You can be my Savior, but I'm not going to make you Lord of my life." I love the idea that Jesus saves me, but I don't want to surrender all that I am to him, because that means I have to change. There's going to be some heartache. There's going to be some pain in the experience. But Jesus never intended anyone to be half-hearted in this thing. Never expected any of us to kind of we live in a very weird culture, right? So we're thinking back to ancient Hebrew culture. Jesus was walking around saying, "Hey, give up this," and the rich young ruler's like, "I can't do that." So he just walked away. But he never expected, "I'll give you what looks like all my stuff, but I'll half-heartedly follow you. They knew that it expected all or nothing. And so we have this experience over and over and over again where he says, come, follow me, and give up everything. Surrender to me. Surrender to me. So today we're going to be talking about that. So what does a life fully surrendered to Jesus look like? That's our first question today. And maybe you've never thought about it. Maybe you're new here. Maybe this is your first time. Maybe you've been in church since you were a baby, as I see a baby being held on our left side here. Like maybe you just grew up in this thing and it's been a part of it. But maybe you've even never thought about what does it actually look like for me to surrender all that I am, to give up my rights, to give up my will for his. And today that's what we're going to talk through. I had an experience when I was 14. I grew up in church. I grew up at Bethesda Christian Church right up the street. We were in Detroit at the time. But I went to youth camp, went to youth group, went to youth camp all the time. And I was 13 years old. We were at summer youth camp. And I had somebody come up to me at the end of one of the services and speak into my life and said, I feel from God that you're going to be a youth pastor. And I was like, I don't know if I want that at 13 years old, fighting that one. And so I was like, okay, I accept that. But then years down the road, kind of walked away from that calling. And so I was in college. I got done. I was done with high school, got done with all of that, and stepped into college, went to OU. I went to Macomb Community College first, went to OU. I was a political science major, wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to make a bunch of money, do all the things. And I was like, I can argue with people. It's going to be fine. Judges are going to love me, all the things, right? And none of that was true. They would have hated me. Anyway, but 3.5 years into a degree, and I'm at Oakland University, and I ran into this professor that just did not like me. The first day of class, and my first time I had her, said, who's a Christian in here? And I was like, oh, geez. This is like the movies, before the movies even came out, like God's, whatever the movie is about. But she's like, who's a Christian in here? So there was like 6 of us that were bravely, raise our hands. And then she would go on about how we were ignorant and all these different things. So through the whole class, it was constitutional law, and then it was political thought. So you kind of can steer where she was going to go with all those Christian ideals. But by the end of the class, I was writing papers, and she would just give me an F. And I was like, hey, can I walk through why this? And she was also my professor. She was my dean of my department, the political science department, and also my counselor. So I had the trifecta of I couldn't go anywhere, and she was a tenured professor. So I was like, I can go to the president, but he's not going to do anything. So I was in this spot, and so there was this moment. I had the second class with her. There was all these moments back and forth in class, debate, and all this different stuff. And I sat in my car after the class after she failed me again because she just didn't like me. And I started writing papers opposite of what she wanted me to. So it was a little bit on me. I'm going to just be honest with you. But I sat in my car after that second class with her at Oakland University and just said, God, what are you doing? Why am I running into such opposition? It was that moment of just what's going on? And he was very clear, very gentle with me and just said, you're not doing what I asked you to do. And so I'm sitting in the car going, what does that mean? And he said, I asked you to be a youth pastor. And I was like, oh, I wanted to make money for my family and all the things that I thought I had to collect. But ultimately, it came down to me surrendering what I wanted in order to do and accomplish what he had for me to do. So I sat in the car that day crying and figuring out, God, I need to step back into your will for my life. And then I registered and went to Liberty University for Bible. And so we have these moments where we have to just lay it all out and surrender, right? And maybe you haven't had one yet if you're young enough, but if you're old enough, you've had a few of those most likely, where you just have this moment of, God, what are you doing and how can we do this moving forward? So point 1, I promise the rest will go quicker. That was just the setup. Point 1 is this: Jesus calls us to total surrender. We walk through Mathew 16, 24 through 26, and it's, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must put aside selfish ambition. The things I wanted to be a lawyer, to make money, and to do, and to be the things that I thought I wanted to be. I had to lay those things aside. I had to shoulder my cross. I had to do the things, and I had to die to self in order to follow what he had for me to do. And it says, and if you try to keep your life for yourself, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find true life. How is it beneficial for you to gain the whole world but to lose your soul? And I was losing my soul by choosing my way and not his in that moment. So Jesus does not say to us, add me to your life. Add me in to the spaces that I'm convenient. And this is not, so I know this is not an easy conversation today, okay? And I know that I'm like the new guy coming up here and having a hard conversation with the family, so like, just know like I'm Uncle Jesse from Full House. So just picture me as such, I guess. John Stamos would be an upgrade. Anyway, he doesn't say, add me into the spaces of your life that's convenient. He says, I want all of your life. Give me your life. Give me all of it. Every nook, every cranny. Give it to me. In the first century, it would have been very clear when he says, take up your cross, what that would have meant to people. The cross was a symbol, not that I'm wearing a key, but a lot of us wear crosses on our jewelry, and it's like nice and pretty, and we think of Jesus. It's really nice. Easter's pretty, and the flowers and all this stuff. But a cross was a symbol of only one thing in ancient Hebrew culture, death. It was death. That's how they killed us, followers of Jesus. That's how they did that. And so for people to say, take up your cross, what does that mean? Well, it means you need to die to self. You need to give up your life for the sake of me. And so this would have been very clear to them. And he was saying, come and die with me. Die to your old self. Die to your control. Die to your way. And we live in a culture that says something completely opposite of that, which is follow your heart. Do what feels right. You do you, right? Which is the opposite of die to yourself and follow and give control to me, the one that made you and knit you together and knows what's best for you. And so we have these moments where we see this time and time again. In Romans 12, 1 and 2 says this. It says, and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you, give your bodies to God. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind that he will accept. When you think of what he has done for you, is this too much to ask? Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will know what God wants you to do, and you will know how good and pleasing and perfect his will really is. And then Galatians 2:20 just says this, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me. We die to self so that we can see what he has for us and ultimately have the best life that he has offered us and what he has set forth in us from the beginning. Salvation is free, but surrender costs everything. Salvation is a real pretty thing for us to think of. I want to be saved. That's great. We all want to be saved. But when we think of surrender, we think that might be a cost too heavy for me to bear, which is why the rich young ruler walks away sad, because he had many things to put down. What we gain at the end ultimately is infinitely better than what we think we retain in this moment when we hold on to our stuff. This is for another whole sermon as some component. Tyler can totally crush this one. But how do we break that kind of like willpower in ourselves? How do we break that will in us? And I think there's really only one way that I've experienced. In 42 years on this earth, the only way that I've experienced that I can actually break my own flesh is by fasting. Is by breaking the idea that my flesh says it needs things, and so therefore I don't give it what it wants, and I say I'm going to give it to God instead. And so in that moment of not giving myself food and the things that my body actually needs to survive, I actually begin to break my flesh and then choose what's best for me down the road. And I know that, again, in America, we're indulged, just, eat, drink, and be merry. That's all we think about or all we do. And so it's opposite of the culture. And that's why he says, do not be transformed by this world. Do not go into the culture. We're supposed to be in it, but not of it, right? We're supposed to be in it, know it, but do not become and conform to the culture. So, is Jesus Lord of your life? Is he Lord of your relationships? Is he Lord of your finances? Is he Lord of your schedule? Have you allowed him into every nook and cranny of your life? Or is it just church attendance for you? And again, this is no shame, because we all are on different paths. We're all on different timelines with God, right? He's all reached us in different ways and components. But is it just coming to church, or is it full surrender to the God that designed you and knit you together in your mother's womb? Point 2, surrender is lived out through daily obedience. This is not a one-time decision to just surrender. Yes, it ultimately makes in a moment, but you have to choose it every single day. You have to choose tomorrow when you wake up. If we get tomorrow, you get to choose to surrender again. God, I will give you my schedule. I will give you my time. I will give you my life and my health and all the things that you've offered to me. John 14:15 says this, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And Luke 6:46 says, why do you call me Lord and not do what I say? He's connecting here the idea of love with obedience. If we say we love him, if we say we've made him Lord of our life, he is our Savior, then why are we not obeying? Why are we not connecting that like he has walked us through? So I have, if I can find them, I have a saying that I've used for years. In my old office, I have like a thing that my wife had somebody make for me. It just says, progress, not perfection. And I think so often we don't think we're perfect, so therefore we give up or whatever. And that's not what God's calling us to do. I've had stickers made up. I've had shirts. I've had all kinds of stuff done because I think the idea is we're just not perfect enough. I can't will it to happen, so therefore I give up. And it's not about that. It's about the idea of progressing towards or moving towards or choosing your mindset towards Christ. And in that, you will be perfected. It is that sanctification that Tyler talked about last week or the week before. I don't really remember. But it is the process of becoming like Jesus. It's not overnight. You don't become like Jesus overnight. It's in time. It's over time. And then it's through that process that he begins to change us and walk us through all of that. But I love this quote. Before I get there, we think I have to never fail. But instead, we should have a heart like David that just says, I will always fail, but I will always return to my God. He's not a man after God's own heart because he was perfect. David was anything but perfect. Mistake, all the way through his life, even as a leader. But he always returned in worship to his God and to prayer. And so in that moment, I love this quote from John Mark Comer. It just says, following Jesus is not just about believing the right things, but it's about arranging your entire life around him. So often we do the opposite. We arrange our life and then we say, where can Jesus fit in, right? And so we have these moments of kind of going, how do we make this thing work? How do we make this thing work? But it starts with saying, Jesus, you're the center of my life. How does my family fit into that? How does my finances fit into who he says, or says what my finances should be? And how does all those things fit into what that looks like? So it's about arranging your entire life around the person of Jesus. We arrange our lives around a lot of other things, though, right? Football games, schedules, work calendars, social plans, streaming, whatever show or thing, whatever comes out, whatever day it is. We'll arrange all those things. But then where do we fit Jesus in? Surrender says, Jesus, you come first. Everything else adjusts. And a lot of times, including myself, this has been a hard week. Whenever you preach, you work through these issues as you're prepping, right? So for me, it's going, man, I've had a rough week just going, I need to surrender a whole lot more. So I'm not coming to you as a guy that's figured it out by any means. Tyler knows that, okay? So I'm a guy coming to you just saying, I'm just a regular dude that knows that God wants to share these things with us today, and I'm just willing to say yes. That's all. That's all. You can ask my wife after service. I'm definitely not anywhere near being where I'm supposed to be. And so he said, everything else must adjust to kind of go in there. So Philippians 2 says, God, God works in us to will and to act according to good purposes. When we obey and bow to his will, God will supply the power and the needs that we have. He will provide those things. He will add those things to us. And then this is something that I've heard for years, and you're like, I did obey, but it took me 12 years. So the idea of delayed obedience is still disobedience. Like, this is something that I heard as a teenager, I'm pretty sure, but it just keeps coming up in my life. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. If he told you to do it then, and you're like, cool, I'll wait till I'm 40 or whatever, that's still technically disobedience. Am I wrong? So when we think through these things, we think we're even doing it right sometimes, but we're not doing it in the timeline he told us to lay it out. And so we want to make sure that we're fully giving it over, fully giving it to that. And I learned delayed obedience is still disobedience when I went to OU on my own accord, sat in the car and said, what's going on? And he was like, you're not doing what I asked you to do. I had been disobeying him for years and not going down the track he had for me. And it ultimately made me, it was money, it was time, it was effort, it was all the things that I wasted in pursuing things that were not what he had for me. Point 3, surrender follows from abiding with Jesus. This is something I have learned in my 30s and into my 40s, is that ultimately, I love that Tyler even has a quote in his office. I snuck up there today. And I'm going to read it because it's good. And I appreciate a pastor that just has a heart like he does. So I'm just going to read it to you. You might never see this, but I'm going to tell you what it says. It just says, the greatest thing I can bring to the pulpit is not my charisma or my giftings, but rather my intimacy with Jesus. There's so many people that stand in pulpits and stand leading churches that use charisma and talent. And the fruit will show you that there's no intimacy with Jesus. They will show you that they're really good speakers, that they can bring a crowd, they will get money, they will have buildings, they will do all the things, but they do not have intimacy with Jesus. And what we should be doing is testing that and saying, does my leader, does my pastor have fruit? Is he intimate with Jesus on a daily basis? And do we see that fruit from those moments? And so it's abiding with Jesus. Whoever, John 15:5, I'm a crier if you didn't already know, but it is what it is. We call them dang Margaret moments in our house. So my grandma was named Margaret. She would always cry about everything. I came home with fake earrings once and went to her house, and she's like, Jesse. And I'm like, what's going on right now? But she was so saddened by me having these earrings that were fake, by the way. And but she was just, so we call them dang Margaret moments all the time now. We're like, dang Margaret gave us this gene to cry. But it's in these moments where it's something's hitting us and the Spirit hurts inside of us because there's something more that God has for us. And so John 15:5 just says, whoever abides in me bears much fruit. If there's no abiding, there's zero fruit. If you're not abiding with Jesus, you're getting the wrong kind of fruit. If you're not abiding and connecting to the one that brings the good fruit, you will bear rotten fruit or no fruit. You cannot live surrendered publicly if you are disconnected privately. I will say that again. You cannot live surrendered publicly if you are disconnected privately. What you do behind closed doors is more important on a regular basis than what we do in public. But it shows in public. I said this in church meetings forever. I said, when we get together as a staff is great. Love those moments. But what we do before we get to those meetings is way more important than what we do together. Because if we're not bringing ourselves that are already surrendered to Jesus together into those meetings, what we do in those meetings will not be as effective as it could be. Does that make sense? Jesus, the Son of God, who came to this earth to save us, still had to get up and surrender his will on a daily basis. In Mark 1:35, it talks about how Jesus got up early and went away to desolate places, went away to faraway places to be with his Father. I love that it says specifically he got up early when it was still dark, because it tells us that we're going to have to sacrifice some things. I love that that Scripture is so intentional with us, so good to us to show us what's it going to cost. Well, sometimes it's going to cost you need to get up early. My kids get up at like 6 a.m. when on break. Like it's Christmas break and they're up at 6. And I'm like, what are you doing? So for me, it's on a regular basis. If I'm not getting up before them, which I've been terrible at lately, just for the record, 42-year-old body, whatever, I'm learning to be tired all the time. So like that stuff. But if I don't get up before them and learn, I know some of you are like, just wait, yeah. But if I don't get up early before them to be with Jesus myself, then I'm a terrible father and a terrible husband and a terrible dude on the road. I'm a terrible, whatever, all the things. I'm not good at those things if I'm not with him initially. But I love that Scripture tells us he got up early, got away to desolate place. He walked there. He did those things because he, as the Son of God, still needed to be with his Father on a regular basis, and he sacrificed for those things. Dallas Willard says the following about this kind of thing. It says, the greatest issue facing the world today with all its heartbreaking needs is whether those who, by profession or by culture, are identified as Christians will become disciples, students, apprentices, practitioners of Jesus Christ, steadily learning from him how to live the life of the kingdom of the heavens in every corner of human existence. An apprentice stays close to the one whom they follow. In Hebrew culture, we don't really know what that looks like. We don't know what a true disciple is in this world because we're like, what is a disciple? It's either a band that you know of, or it's like you hear disciples when it comes to cults, and you're like, not sure if I want to do that thing. But an apprentice, we understand, because we have apprentices to all kinds of things in this world. And so to become an apprentice of Jesus means that we follow Jesus closely. The old saying in Hebrew culture was, to be covered on the dust of your rabbi is what they were aiming for. And that just meant that you followed your rabbi so close through the dirt streams or the dirt streets that you actually had the dust covered all over you because you followed him so close. I wish we could all say that, right? I just want to be covered in the dust of the rabbi that I follow, and that's Jesus, because I'm following him so close. Time with Jesus shapes surrender. If we're not fully surrendered, I would question you and myself. How much time are we actually spending with Jesus? So Acts 4:13, one of my favorite scriptures, and one of the things that I point to and go, I hope I can be this someday. It just says, the members of the council were amazed that they saw the boldness of Peter and John, and they could see that they were just ordinary men and had no special training. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus. I hope someday somebody could look at me and say, that's just an ordinary dude, but I can tell something's different because he's been with Jesus. I hope that we can all strive to be that. I don't care what else they know about me. Tyler said the other, Tyler's name is not what we're here for. Jesse's name is not what we're here for. Your name is not what we're here for. But if they could say, hey, they're just ordinary people, but ultimately, ordinary people, but I know that they've been with Jesus and there's something different about them. I'm going to fly through the last, okay? I'm already behind. Now I know how Tyler feels all the time I already know how clocks work, but anyway, that's the thing. A few final things. Here's a slide that's going to pop up and say the following. You don't drift into surrender. You don't just one day find yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm surrendered. If you've tried it, you know that it doesn't work that way, right? So you don't drift into surrender. You have to practice it. You have to give it daily. You have to surrender yourself on the daily. Francis Chan had I'm going to read a quote from him in a second, but he also had another illustration of we're all in a river. Rivers move. I don't know if you know this. My father-in-law is here. He lives on the St. Clair River. If you go in the river and just sit, you'll find yourself a mile down the river really quick, right? So we have these moments where Francis Chan was like, hey, we're all in a river of life. If you think you're staying stagnant and kind of just, I'm not doing anything great, but I'm just kind of chilling, you will find yourself way beyond where you thought you were down the road in just a few short days, weeks, months, years. We have to constantly strive to get upriver. And if we don't, we will find ourselves way back. So it doesn't just happen. Surrender doesn't just happen. And then point 4 is surrender leads to making disciples. Matthew 28, just 18 through 20, just go and make disciples of all nations. Go, make disciples. It doesn't say to make converts. It doesn't say to make church members. It doesn't say to do any of that, although those things are good. It says to make disciples. Follow some people that will make you better. And then you have people in life that you do life with. And then you find your couple people that you go and you help and you disciple them and say, follow me as I follow Christ. Ultimately, we're supposed to be, a disciple is somebody who is with Jesus, becomes like Jesus, and do what he does. That's all it is. We're with him, we learn to be like him, and then we do what he does. 2 Timothy 2:2 says, entrust to faithful people who will teach others also. So this is Paul writing to Timothy, talking about faithful people who will teach other people. So that's 4 generations of teaching. You're talking Paul to Timothy, Timothy to faithful people to the next generation of saying, hey, we are supposed to duplicate ourselves. We're supposed to do this thing, not by ourselves. We're supposed to make more than what we're just I can learn all day long and be a really good disciple, but if I'm not discipling other people and I'm not multiplying myself, I am failing at the mission of what God's called me to do. It's called multiplication. I'm not a math guy, but that is something we should be doing. Francis Chan says this, our greatest fear in life should not be of failure, but at succeeding in things in life that don't really matter. Failure happens. Try things a couple times, try a new job, try a new thing, try a new hobby, try a new baked good thing that you want to do. Try it, and you will fail a couple times. That's not ultimately a bad thing. Failure is not bad. It's when we succeed at life at just doing frivolous, silly things. And we're like, what'd you get done? I don't really know. I played zombie soccer for 3 hours on my computer, or whatever your thing is. Okay, so, but we're supposed to strive to do what he has called us to do. Zombie soccer. I don't know if anybody plays zombie soccer anymore. It was from The Office. Okay, so you can have a great career, a full bank account, a busy schedule, a comfortable life, and still miss eternity. You can fall short of that. Surrender asks, who am I helping to follow Jesus? Not do I attend church, but am I making disciples? Who's discipling me? Who am I discipling? Who am I doing life with on a regular basis? Who around me is making me better? And then who am I praying for? This is the whole Paul, Barnabas, and Timothy kind of idea of who's pouring into you, who are you doing life with? So it's Paul pouring into you. Barnabas, you're doing life with people. And then you have a Timothy, people that you pour into. I have these listen, I'm a sticker guy, okay? So I have this sticker that I talked through students with for a long time. Find your 3. Find your 3 people that you will pour into. But you first have to have people that are pouring into you, doing life with people in order to say, hey, follow me as I follow Christ. Because if you say, follow me as I follow Christ, and you're not, then you get to answer for that. But at some point, we get in our lives and we say, follow me as I follow Christ. I'm imperfect, I promise. But my striving is for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And if you follow me, I promise you, you will find him. Okay? Point 5. Only 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Surrender requires letting go of comfort. This is the one we don't like to talk through. Thank you for smiling, at least. Oh, that's good. Luke 14:33 says, if any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Those are the scriptures we try to just go, cool, and like walk away from a little bit. It sounds intense because it is. This is the rich young ruler, right? I've done all this since my youth. I am a great follower of God. What do I have to do to inherit the kingdom of God? He says, go give up all that you have and follow me. And then he puts his head down, walks away because he has tons of stuff, and he doesn't want to give it up. Jesus never hid the cost from us. It is hard in America because we look at scriptures like it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. And we go, that's like, whoever, Bezos or some rich person you know of. And instead, it's no, we're all rich. I mean, we have money in our pockets. We have things. We might not be as rich as we want to be. But we have this moment of deciding, like, the things that we have on this earth, James tells us, will testify against us at the end of our lives. Like, James is very clear, like, the stuff that we are piling up in those storehouses that Joseph was talking about earlier will testify against us. If we don't use it for his good, they will testify against us at the end of our life. And so Jesus never hid the cost. Philippians 3:8, I count everything as loss because of Christ. We like comfort, but Jesus likes transformation. He wants us to be transformed, not comfortable. He wants us to be transformed, not comfortable. And that's not fun, but it is what he has for us. Comfort seeks or keeps us safe, and surrender makes us useful. Again, comfort keeps us safe, while surrender makes us a little bit useful, and we get to be used by him. So, you cannot hold tightly to comfort and walk closely with Jesus. As we're concluding, the idea of I can still want comfort, I can still want all these things and still walk closely with Jesus because Jesus will tell you to let it all go. The idea of the open hand versus the closed hand is something that we talk about in church a lot with issues. What's a closed-handed issue when it comes to theology, or what's an open-handed issue when it comes to theology? At my old church, it was jeans in church felt like a closed-handed one, but it should have been an open-handed one, right? Jeans don't make you go to hell, right? Right? Okay, so you're up there going, I don't know about you, but I think you're, no, just kidding. I said, but like jeans don't make you go to hell. It's not the denim on my pants that's making me go to hell. And so that should be an open-handed issue. It's the same thing with our lives and what we have. We should be living open-handedly when it comes to our finances, when it comes to our home, when it comes to our car. All the things that God's blessed us with, whatever we have is his. And so if we live open-handedly, he will continue to fill us and let us overflow with what he has for us. When we live like this is when nothing can fall into our hand. And we continue to hold on to what we have, and that's all we'll ever get. And so when we begin to live open-handedly is when we begin to see that he just fills our open hands, and we begin to walk through that. So Luke 5:1 just says this. They left everything. The disciples that Jesus called, he says, follow me. They left everything behind. The fishermen left their nets and their boats. Mathew left his tax booth and all of the prestige and the money and the things and said, I'll give it all up for you. And they just left and followed him. They didn't know the future. They knew who Jesus was, and that was enough. So for us in the world that we live in, the question always is Jesus enough? Is Jesus enough? Or is it Jesus and? Or is it Jesus and? And Joshua just, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Like that is enough, and we'll see what he has for us down the road. He will provide. He will give. And today we're going to be asking, as we close, just, are we kind of a fan of Jesus? The old idea of fan or follower kind of thing. Are we a fan of him, or are we a follower of him? Do we want to be covered in the dust of Jesus because we walk so closely to him? Will we just attend church, or will we build disciples? Will we just come in and go out, or will we come in, build each other up, and then when we step out of these walls, the work begins, and we begin to continue to build disciples down the road? Romans 6:13 just says this, offer yourselves to God. Just offer. When we're in worship and we're raising our hands and all the things, that's just surrender. That's just a symbol of what we're doing in the moment. There's nothing magical about raising your hands in church. There's nothing about it. But it is the moment of just going, God, I give you all that I am. I lay it down. I give you my life at this altar. I give my life to you right now. And I just do that today.